She was fighting cancer while her poor sister was stealing her life. Her biggest mistake wasn't trusting her sister. It was underestimating her. So you guys tell me, how do you prove you are yourself when someone else is living your life?
Adaeze Okonkwo had everything. A white mansion in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos. A driver named Emeka who knew her coffee order by heart. A husband, Chief Nnamdi Okonkwo, who kissed her forehead every morning before his board meetings. 2 children in private school in Abuja, and a name that opened doors before she could even knock. But at night, when the generator hummed and the house was quiet, Adaeze sat in her marble bathroom and cried. The paper in her hand had a logo from Lagos Island General Hospital at the top. The words underneath were short, but they carried the weight of the whole world. Stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive. Treatment must begin immediately. She folded the paper and slipped it into the pocket of her silk robe. Then she dried her eyes, walked back to her bedroom, and smiled at her sleeping husband. Nobody could know. Not yet. Adaeze had a twin sister named Chisom. They were born on the same day in Enugu, the daughters of a poor civil servant who died when they were 7. But life split them like a broken yam. Adaeze married up. Chisom married a man who drank his salary every Friday night and left her with 3 children and a rented room in Mushin. They had not spoken in 4 years. The last fight was ugly. Chisom had asked Adaeze for school fees money, and Adaeze had given it, but with words so sharp they drew blood. Chisom left that day and never came back. Now, Adaeze sat in a cold plastic chair at a hospital in Ikeja, watching the door of a small waiting room, her heart beating too fast. The door opened. Chisom walked in. She was still beautiful. That was the thing about twins. Even suffering could not erase the mirror. But Chisom's clothes were faded, her sandals were cracked at the heel, and there was a tiredness in her eyes that had not been there before. Adaeze stood. "Thank you for coming." Chisom folded her arms. "Your message said it was urgent. I came. What do you want?" Adaeze took a breath. "I need your help. I am sick, very sick." Something moved in Chisom's eyes. It was not quite sympathy. It was something more complicated. "I am going abroad for treatment. Germany. The doctor there says I need at least 3 months. But I cannot tell Nnamdi, not now. He has the Abuja contract deal closing. If he finds out I am sick, he will cancel everything and stay by my side, and we will lose billions." Chisom raised one eyebrow. "And what does this have to do with me?" Adaeze reached into her bag and placed a thick envelope on the table between them. "I need you to be me. Just for 3 months. Live in my house, sleep in my bed, sit at my table. You know how I talk, how I walk. We are identical. Nobody will know." Chisom stared at the envelope. Then she looked at her sister. Then she laughed. A short, dry laugh that had no joy in it. "You are serious," Chisom said. Adaeze did not blink. "I have never been more serious in my life."
Chisom said no. Then she said maybe. Then she opened the envelope and counted the money inside, and she said yes. The training began immediately. For 1 week, they stayed together in a quiet hotel in Victoria Island. Adaeze taught Chisom everything. How Chief Nnamdi liked his pepper soup with only goat meat, never fish. How the housekeeper, Mama Titi, was nosy and must never be left alone in the bedroom. How the children, Tobena and Ifunanya, called their mother Mommy Ada and expected her to pray with them every night before bed. Chisom listened and learned with the focus of a student who had spent her whole life being told she was less than. She practiced the way Adaeze tilted her head when she laughed. She practiced the calm, warm voice that Adaeze used with strangers. She practiced walking in the expensive heels without stumbling. "You are a fast learner," Adaeze said, watching her twin glide across the hotel room. "I had a good reason to learn," Chisom replied, not looking back. On Friday evening, Adaeze flew out of Murtala Mohammed Airport on a private medical trip, officially called a wellness retreat, according to the story they told Chief Namdi. He kissed her cheek at the door and told her to rest well. He was kissing Chisom. The first night in the mansion was terrifying. Chisom lay in the king-size bed on sheets that smelled like jasmine and money, and she could not sleep. The ceiling fan above her was imported. The mattress cost more than her rent for 10 years. And somewhere down the hall, a man who thought she was his wife was snoring peacefully. By morning, she had made a decision. She would do this properly. Mama Titi knocked at 7. "Good morning, madam. Your green smoothie is ready." "Thank you," Chisom said in Adaeze's voice. "Bring it in." The housekeeper entered, set the tray down and studied her briefly. Then she nodded and left. Chisom exhaled. The days passed like a slow dream. Chisom drove in the big car. She sat at the head of the dining table. She attended a charity lunch in Ikoyi, where women call her Ada Darling, and refilled her wine glass before it was even empty. She laughed at the right times. She nodded at the right things, and nobody suspected anything. But it was the evening of the third week that changed something inside her. Chief Namdi came home early. He walked into the sitting room, saw her reading by the window, and smiled in a way that made her chest feel strange. He sat beside her. He held her hand. He said, "I do not tell you enough, Ada, but you are the best thing that ever happened to me." Chisom looked at his face. This man, this powerful, gentle man who smelt of cedar and success. This man who had chosen her sister. This life that had always belonged to someone else. She squeezed his hand back. "I know," she said softly. And in that moment, something cold and quiet settled in her heart, like a seed being planted in dark soil. 3 months suddenly felt very short.
Adaeze called from Germany every Sunday at noon. Chisom had learned to step into the garden alone, far from Mama Titi's curious ears, to take these calls. "How is everything?" Adaeze would ask. "Fine, normal. Nobody suspects," Chisom would answer. But by the 6th week, the calls grew shorter. And by the 8th week, something in Adaze's voice changed. She sounded weaker. The treatment was harder than expected. The doctors had found something more. She needed another 2 months. Chisom said she understood. She hung up the phone and walked back into the house. Tobena was chasing Ifunaja through the corridor with a toy car, screaming with laughter. Mama Titi was scolding them from the kitchen. The generator was running because NEPA had taken light again. Everything was warm and loud and alive. Chisom stood in the doorway and felt, for the first time in her adult life, that she was exactly where she belonged. She stopped visiting her own children in Mushin. She sent money instead, more money than she had ever seen in her life. Her husband called twice. She did not pick up. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Chief Namdi hosted a business dinner at the house. 10 men in expensive agbadas, a senator, a bank director, a man whose name appeared in the newspapers every week. Chisom sat at the head of the table in a dress that cost more than her mushy neighbors earned in a year. And she was magnificent. She spoke about infrastructure. She spoke about education. She made 2 of the men laugh out loud. The senator leaned over at the end of the night and told Chief Namdi, "Your wife is extraordinary. You are a very lucky man."
Chief Namdi looked at Chisom across the table with pride shining in his eyes. That night, after the guests left, he told her he wanted to put her name on a new foundation he was launching, the Adaeze Okonkwo Foundation for Women. A real thing, registered, funded, public. He said, quietly, that for too long I have kept you in the shadow of my business. You deserve your own light. Chisom's eyes filled with real tears, but they were not Adaze's tears. They were hers. Yes, she said, I would like that very much. The next morning, she called Adaeze, but this time she did not mention the foundation. She did not mention the dinner. She asked only about the treatment, listened patiently, said supportive things, and hung up. Then, she went to Chief Namdi's study, sat across from his lawyer, and began signing documents. Not as Chisom, as Adaeze. 3 weeks later, when the real Adaeze called to say she was coming home, Chisom sat very still for a long time after she hung up the phone. Then, she went to find Mama Titi. If anyone calls or comes to this gate asking for a woman named Chisom, I do not know that name. Do you understand? Mama Titi blinked. Then slowly she nodded. Because Mama Titi had known from week 1. She had simply been waiting to see which way the wind would blow.
Adaeze returned on a Tuesday. She had lost weight. Her head was wrapped in a soft Ankara scarf because the chemo had taken her hair. Her skin was dull in the way that sickness dulls even beautiful things. But her eyes were sharp and alive. She had fought hard to come home. She took a taxi from the airport. She had not told Chisom she was coming back early. She wanted to surprise everyone. She wanted to walk through her own front door and smell her own house and hold her children. The taxi stopped at the gate. Adaeze stepped out and pressed the intercom. The gateman, a young man named Sule, who had worked there for 2 years, squinted through the camera. Then he frowned. "Who are you?" he said. "Sule, it is me, Madam Ada. Open the gate." Sule looked uncomfortable. "Madam Ada is inside, ma." A cold wave moved through Adaze's body. "What did you say?" "Madam is inside. She is in the garden with the children. I cannot let a stranger in without permission." Adaeze pressed the intercom button again and again. She called out to him. She called the children's names. She described the house, the garden, the way Emeka the driver parked the car slightly crooked every evening. Nothing. She called Namdi's phone. It rang. He did not pick up. She called again. Still nothing. She called Chisom's old number, the motion number. It was switched off. She sat down on the ground outside her own gate, on the hot Lagos road, with her small hospital bag between her feet, and she breathed, in and out. She would not cry, not here, not on this road. Then she heard footsteps inside the gate. The small side door clicked open. Mama Titi appeared. Adaeze stood up. "Mama Titi, thank God. Tell them it is me." Mama Titi looked at her for a long time. Her face was full of something that was not quite guilt and not quite courage. "Madam," she said in a low voice, "the madam inside has already told Oga that you called from Germany with a strange story. She told him you are a woman who has been claiming to be her twin sister. She told him you have been calling and threatening the family." Adaeze felt the world tilt. What did she say? "She said you are mentally unstable. She said you have been following her since London. She showed him photos of you at the hospital. She said it is a condition, that sick people sometimes believe they are other people." Mama Titi's voice dropped even lower. "Oga believes her. He has already called a lawyer." Adaeze grabbed the old woman's wrist gently. "Mama Titi, you know me. You know who I am. Tell me the truth. You know." The old woman's eyes filled with water. "I know. God knows I know.
Then help me. Mama Titi looked behind her, back through the gate, toward the garden where laughter floated off the wall like something stolen. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, Adaeze saw everything she needed to know. There was one person who could save her, one piece of evidence Chisom could not have erased.
Adaeze had a scar. It was small, barely 2 centimeters, just below her left knee. She had gotten it at age 9 when she fell from a mango tree in Onugu. Their father had sewn it up himself with a needle and thread because they could not afford the clinic. Chisom had been there. She had held her sister's hand and cried harder than the one who was bleeding. That scar was the only thing in the world that was truly, completely Adaze's. Chisom had no such mark, never had. Adaeze called a journalist named B.C. Adewale. She had met B.C. 3 years ago at a women's forum. B.C. was the kind of woman who asked uncomfortable questions for a living and refused to apologize for it. "I need you to listen to something that will sound impossible," Adaeze said on the phone. B.C. listened. Then she said, "Come to my office." Adaeze laid everything out. The hospital in Germany, the dates, the doctor's name, the phone records from the Sunday calls, the fact that Chisom had signed foundation documents in her name, the fact that her children did not know their real mother was standing outside a gate in the Lagos heat. BC asked for one thing. "Can you prove who you are without documents? Because your sister has your documents." Adaeze pulled up her trouser leg. "Photograph this scar, then go into that house and look below her left knee." It took BC 4 days. She went to the house under the pretense of writing a profile about the Adaeze Okonkwo Foundation. She shook Chisom's hand. She asked her questions, and when the moment was right, she looked down. 2 smooth, unmarked legs. The story BC published on Thursday morning shook Lagos like thunder in dry season. Lagos socialite's twin sister steals identity while she fought cancer abroad. The photos ran side by side. The documents were shown. The German hospital confirmed treatment dates. The fund company released records. By Friday evening, Chief Nnamdi Okonkwo had driven to BC's office himself. He sat across from Adaeze and looked at her face. Really looked. The scarf on her head, the thinness of her hands, the scar below her knee. He did not speak for a very long time. When he finally opened his mouth, his voice cracked like an old wall. "I should have known," he said. She laughed differently. "I told myself it was because you were arrested, but I knew." Adaeze reached across the table and held his hand. "You did not know because I taught her well. This is also my fault." Chisom was arrested at the Okonkwo house on Saturday morning. She did not fight. She did not scream. She walked out of the front door in Adaze's clothes, past Suli at the gate, past Emeka standing by the car, and she stopped when she saw her sister. They stood face to face on the same road for the first time in months. 2 mirrors, one broken. "Did you hate me that much?" Adaeze asked. Chisom looked at her for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was very quiet. "No," she said. "I hated myself that much." The police car door closed. Adaeze watched it drive away. Then she turned, walked through her own gate, and called out to her children. She had a lot of living left to do.